Thank you very much, QuickShot. Welcome to the world's Cooldown. KT handing the LPL their very first loss of the tournament, and in front of the home crowd, you heard the roar of the stadium there as they stepped out to take their bow after that victory, moving to 3-0.
It's got to feel incredible having like the hopes and dreams of the whole nation on you guys, and then being able to go and prove
Actually
that
execute on it.
So like you have your faith in the right people, and then be able to kind of really destroy EDG, I'd say.
Yeah, it felt like Edward Gaming finally fell off the expectations of LPL, hit reality, and reminded everyone that, hey, you know, we just barely qualified in the World Championship. We won 2 best-of-5s. We got here. We are the 3rd seed. And KT were like, ah, yes, time to play with our food, because that's exactly what it looked like.
Play with our food is one way to put it. I want to dive into some of the nuance of this game, because there were some really cool kind of micro things happening very early on for KT.
Yeah, there's a thing in fighting game terms you hear a lot called conditioning. It's when you do the same thing over and over again to set up something that's going to happen later. And here, Mata, level 1, just goes absolutely crazy with these headbutts into the wall time and time again, just constantly trading, and it forces the enemy team to trade back on you. It doesn't give them a chance to go for a ward, and it really gets them in this aggressive mindset. So you finally do it again as you've been posturing up in lane this entire time. You're so used to him being postured up that like the one time the jungler is coming behind him, you're not ready for it.
Oh, here comes the Alistar. He's just going to headbutt smack me in the face again, but fine, we'll trade back. Oh, this time there's a Xin Zhao, now I'm dead.
Yeah, and it's hard to know how much of that was pre-planned, but like, you know, Skora is pathing down there, and Mata's doing this from level 1, and it kind of felt really like they were like, hey, we're just going to fight like crazy, and if they're not respecting like that Xin can come bot lane, like there's going to be a gank here, because they're not going to get a chance to ward.
Without a doubt. Let's roll forward to one other play, KT's tower dive. We pull this one up on your screens here and roll through it.
And this is just beautifully orchestrated. And what I love about this is that KT recognizing where they are strongest and where Edward Gaming are strongest to make them now their weakest. You know, EDG have always been about their bottom lane, and KT just orchestrated beautifully, have the 4-man dive very early on, and just immediately put EDG in the hole in kind of their one primary win point that they constantly play around on the map.
It just felt bad. iBoy does a nice buffer out of the Alistar headbutt pulve combo to get out of there. It's your son. It's like, oh, there's an Urgot and it's just waiting for me. So I think you can see EDG is still a great team, but after that play, it kind of felt like they conceded, like, okay, KT, you're really, really good. We're gonna back off and contesting you and hope that you like throw somehow, and KT just never made a mistake, really.
It was basically like, yes, Mr. KT, right after you, Mr. KT, you can have this, Mr. KT, everything. They just hid in their base.
I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, you see that many plays go right for the other team, that many plays go wrong for you, and maybe things that you didn't predict. It really can start to wear on your conscience and just assuming that the other team has your number.
But they should know better. You know, looking at this from a perspective of, you know, we expect that this is heavy favorites to KT. They look so clean and dominant. But what the hell are Edward Gaming thinking when they continuously are picking Nocturne? Playing Clear Love, that makes sense. You want your shot calling issues to be shored up. That's why they bring him into the roster. He's the guy with the most veteran experience. It's a very intense game, so there's going to be pressure there for your new jungler in Haro. But putting him on Nocturne, he's never been known for Nocturne. You know that KT are a team that like to play hyper-aggressive early, so you put yourself into a jungler that can't do anything pre-level 6. You then have a Tristana and a Azir. I just think the game plan from the very beginning was quite confusing and just a really bad read. Like you were ever going to survive the first 15 minutes in the ring with KT.
And I think I would love to hear your opinion on this, because to me it felt like, okay, watching that game, they had the mechanics to mostly keep up, but like the coordinated aggression is what's really crazy. And I think, do you think Haro would have been a better player to put in there because he is a little bit more...
He's willing to match aggression with aggression?
Yeah, I think it feels to me like that. I mean, I know Clear Love can play, you know, pre-6 junglers as well, but when I watched the gauntlet or the qualification for EDG, it did feel like Haro was such a huge part in that.
It's kind of like what you give and take. So Haro does mean that you're going to have much more pressure around the mid lane for Scout, that you're going to camp the lane. If your idea is that, okay, EDG, they like to play around bottom lane, but Scout truly is the real carry, like he's the guy who's individually overperforming, then you go that route. But right now, post 20 minutes, Edward Gaming have no idea what they're doing. They're constantly making terrible map reads, particularly around the Baron, which is why in the regular split, they started bringing Clear Love back in. So you look at their draft, the Azir scaling, the Tristana scaling, you look at the fact that they're starting Clear Love, it tells me that EDG were thinking, survive lane phase, we'll shore up our shot calling, we'll get to the team fighting state. And again, I agree if that was like
didn't happen.
What they wanted, they set themselves up for it, but I think it was just a bad plan before they even got into it.
Right, because we saw the dominance of Scout's Azir just the other day, right? We know that this guy's no slouch on the champion, but if you don't give him the opportunity to get to that point where he can be dominant, then it's all for naught. For more, though, on how they top Group C, let's send it over to Shox and the victorious bot laner.
with Deft after KT secures first place in the group. This was a decisive yet a bit of a slower game, Deft. What were the challenges in taking down your ex-team EDG?
네, 우선 승리 정말 축하드리고 1위를 확정하셨어요. 근데 오늘 조금 느리게 경기를 굴렸는데 어떤 식으로 경기를 준비하고 어느 점이 어려웠는지 궁금합니다.
일단 저희가 1픽으로 이제 자야를 가져왔기 때문에 원거리 딜러 면에서는 캐리력이 가장 높다고 생각해서 초반에 이제 저를 잘 키운 상태에서 실수만 안 한다면은 저희가 무조건 이긴다고 생각하고 경기를 했던 것 같아요.
So we first picked Saya, and I think it's the most strongest champion so far. So I think if I just get skilled enough and don't make any mistake, I knew that we were gonna win.
And you guys did. This is also the first LPL team to drop a game. And besides taking down your ex-team, that is also a big honor. Is it important to you to have been the first team to deal that loss to the LPL region?
그럼 오늘 드디어 LPL의 전승을 끄는 팀이 됐는데 친정팀을 끄는 것만 이상으로도 의미를 갖고 있는데 그런 게 어떤 의미를 갖고 있을까요?
뭐 딱히 어떤 의미는 없는 것 같은데 일단 경기 시작하기 전에 지게 되면은 이제 EDG 선수들이 뭔가 저한테 와서 악수하는 게 머릿속으로 그려졌는데 그건 정말 싫은 것 같아서 정말 이겨야겠다고 생각하고 경기했던 것 같아요.
So it actually doesn't really have a big meaning for me, but before games, if I lose, I imagine EDG players coming for a handshake, and I felt like this is a nightmare, so I really wanted to get the win.
Oh, there we go. Now, of course, this team is not just built for winning in the group stages. This is the super team built to win the World Championship. How far do you think you're off from your best performance that will be needed to win the cup?
네, 사실 KT 롤스터는 그룹 스테이지뿐만 아니라 거의 롤드컵 우승을 정말 노린 슈퍼팀이잖아요. 그러면 지금 총 최고 전력에서 몇 퍼센트 정도 나온 것 같은가요?
저희 팀 전력 같은 경우는 이제 팀 플레이 같은 경우에는 지금 굉장히 잘 나오고 있는 것 같은데 제 개인적인 이제 뭐 개인 기량은 아직 많이 부족한 것 같아서 네, 좀 많이 끌어올려야 될 것 같아요.
So in terms of team play, I think we are almost close to the perfection, but my own performance is not as perfect as I expected, so I think I have to practice more.
Something to work on. Finally, a bit more of a funnier question, I think. A couple of years ago, we remember seeing a video from you and Reckless. We know that you guys changed your names in-game. You were EDG, Reckless, and so on. And as fans, we would really love to know what the status of that friendship is.
네, 좀 더 이제 가벼운 질문으로 넘어가자면 사실 레클레스 선수의 우정이 되게 화제잖아요, 언제나. 옛날에는 아이디도 바꿔서 플레이한 적 있는데 지금 그 우정의 상태는 어느 정도인가요?
이제 제가 이제 롤드컵에 왔을 때는 이제 레클리 선수가 못 나오고 또 레클리 선수가 나왔을 때는 제가 못 나오는 경우가 막 생겨서 이제 예전만큼은 연락을 자주 하진 못했지만 그래도 간간히 연락하는 사이인 것 같아요.
So recently when I was at Worlds, he wasn't there, and when I were not there, he was there. So we can't really keep in touch as we did before, but we're trying to keep in touch as much as we can.
Okay, rekindling the friendship. Awesome. Thank you very much, Deft. Fantastic job so far. Thank you, Yusun, for helping us all day. Back over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Shocks. Great to hear from Deft as he makes his way back to the world stage and continues dominant performances now at 3-0. At the conclusion of the first round robin, though, we've got to take a look at who went above and beyond today to earn themselves MasterCard Player of the Game. In Game 6, Mata earned the honor alongside Flashful's Mowgli, G2's Wonder, IG's Baolan, Fnatic's Broxa, and Team Liquid's Xmithy.
There's a lot of junglers on the list today. In fact, we almost had another jungler. I know we were going back and forth between Mata and Score, but we felt like Mata was just a little bit more keen on setting up those fights, setting up the level 1.
Yeah, and 3 Western.
Did your voice
Yeah, let's
crack?
go,
I mean,
boys.
we got the win, right?
Let's
yeah,
go,
we got the
Smithy,
wins
Broxa,
today.
and Wonder. Let's
Yeah,
go.
what do we have here? We got 3 jungles, 2 supports, and a top lane.
And I do really want to grab Wonder because he's the only top laner on the list right now, and I just feel like consistently, you know, when you talk to a lot of like Deficio and Vedes, they're like, yeah, Wonder's not even the best top laner in Europe, and then he shows up and he's just smacking kids.
It's so funny because like they were saying, you know, back in Europe he was like not performing that well, and then like through play-ins I was like, he's the best Western top. Like, he should be. Looks like, is he supposed to be on your top 20 list or not? And then he comes here and he's by far the most important part of their win condition. He's been performing every single game.
I was gonna say, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, he's the pressure valve that they're playing on. I think that's like the really key thing is that it's one thing if G2 kept playing the 1-3-1, and like, it was Perks that was backdooring this time, but that's twice now on Wonder being the guy who's like taking the inhib, matching the solo kill, going toe-to-toe.
And I think that's very cool in a tournament where we've talked about there being a lot of strong top laners. Of course, you're looking at people like Keen, even someday on 100 Thieves, you're looking, that kind of top lane prowess to then watch this guy rise up and make a statement. There's going to be a lot of talk if they make it to the knockout stage about how he matches up and could be a difference maker for G2 in an entire best of 5. With the first round robin complete, though, let's take a look at the group standings. In Group A, G2's huge win pushed them to 2-1. As a result, now share first with the Flash Wolves. Group B has Royal Never Give Up dominating with a 3-way tie for second between Cloud9, Gen.G, and Team Vitality behind them. Over in Group C, KT rolls to remain undefeated with EDG looking to maintain second when the teams return. And finally, Group D has Invictus Gaming undefeated in first with Fnatic holding second at 2-1. Impressions of these groups now that we have completed the first round robin?
I mean, it feels like the LPL dominance continues. The fact that you still have RNG and Invictus Gaming, they're starting to make what it feels like a breakaway. I mean, depending on how you view the Fnatic versus IG game, and if you view it as a close game, if you view it as a not close game, and that was just kind of the ultimate outcome that was going to happen, it feels like there's kind of like that tier, KT's in that tier, and then just a very large gap in everyone else.
I want to hop on that point because while we've talked about the LPL as compared to the struggles of the LCK, I think it is now important for us to delineate and or separate KT from the struggles of the LCK. They are looking very strong.
And that's what's kind of crazy is because, like, this is the best LPL has ever looked. I think it's the first time ever at the halfway point they've had a better record than LCK. I'd have to double check that. But what's going to be really disappointing for the region is if, like, through all of this, it ends with KT holding the trophy, and then I think a lot of this will kind of get forgotten a little bit. The fact that I would say they are the stronger region as a whole.
They definitely appear so.
Yeah, as they're clearly showing, it just feels like KT is so good looking right now. Like, I do think they look a little bit better than RNG, and I just hope that we don't lose this perspective in 2 or 3 more weeks when the tournament's wrapping up.
Right, at the moment, I'm just praying if KT, RNG end up 1 seeds out of both their groups, just get them on opposite sides of the bracket, man. Let me see those 2 teams try and make a run to the finals to play against each other. And while we talk about groups, I do want to go back to Group A for just a moment because this has become a very interesting group based on results through the first round robin.
Right, Group B, you have 3 teams at 1 and 2, but it does still feel like Gen.G is going to turn it around, whereas I'm not as confident in Africa. It did not look super impressive today. G2 looked really good, and then you look at who they have to go through again.
And they beat the team that they're tied with, right?
Right.
G2 beat Flash Wolves, so that definitely makes that race interesting.
Right, there's that race for first, as well as, like, okay, even if Flash Wolves goes 3-0, like, and G2 has to beat the other 2 teams, I think that they're actually looking very good to do that. So I think this is really, really close group, and it's just basically about can Africa find the form that they had when they were at their best, or does G2's split-pushing style continue to baffle them?
It's like trying to assemble who are the dark horses. If we think that it's just like this rocket of KT and RNG like on a crash course, it's then, okay, you probably grab Fnatic as your dark horse. We would have had, Flash Wolves when they started this week, and now G2 with their continuous like clean macro performance, now suddenly, for me, I think they need to pick up 1 more win just because it's just been so inconsistent, specifically between Jankos' performance. Like, I need to see him really solidify himself, not just the Wonder show. And then I'm like, okay, G2 are here to play. They are now a dark horse.
It is tough to pick out who will disrupt those very dominant runs, though, as you mentioned. From now on, though, in Busan, we get 1 group a day as they will complete all of their second round robin games and any tiebreakers in that given day. Tomorrow, Group B returns to the Rift with Vitality squaring off against Royal Never Give Up. Then Gen.G aim to take down Cloud9 before the last 4 games of the group.
And speaking of other dark horse, you said it yourself, we keep expecting Gen.G to come back to life, and I don't know if that's that little voice saying like, it's the LCK team, former world champion, they can do it.
Exactly what that voice is. That's exactly the reason.
We have seen them get better, but I'm like curious. I almost need to go back to the footage and just really look at Gen.G and say, are they actually getting better? Is this team going to be as scary as we expected? Because we're like, the meta seems to be going towards the 5v5, maybe they're getting stronger, but as the games get faster, I'm like, Gen.G have never really been a fast-paced team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game versus RNG, they weren't able to close it out in time, and eventually RNG found the one fight that ended it, and then against C9, it was actually relatively back and forth with C9 largely being the aggressors in the mid ganks that kept coming in, not really finding kills, and then they finally do one mid gank that is just like, and then and then the game's over again.
Could do that again.
Yeah. Anyways, I think it's the kind of thing where Gen.G does have this bit of a concern where if Vitality keeps playing super aggressive, which we haven't talked about yet, by the way, one of my favorite teams to watch this entire world so far. If they play aggressive, C9 continues to play aggressive, they can sneak wins off Gen G very realistically.
That to me is what's telling. It's just the you mentioned pace of game. So aggression, which feeds into pace of game, is kind of what's contributing to the more unknown factor for me about where these games are going to fall.
What's so hilarious to me is that I don't think we're the only ones. I think when people hear Vitality, they think like super fast, very bloody, hyper aggressive. But if you look at Vitality's average game times, they're actually really long. Them and Afrika shoved the average game time up like massively because they did have that one stalled out game.
Would you attribute that to bloodiness and because skirmishes end up as not like aces, 5-0 trades, that they're still trading gold evenly and extending games? Or where does that game time come from?
I have an interesting theory. I'm not convinced it's right, but like, it's the kind of thing, some people were saying, you know, like Korea thinks about the game as like taking turns, and they say like Vitality is like, we're going to take 3 turns in a row right now. Not only do they do that.
All of this is
yeah, they're like, we're just going to keep going, actually. And then they often do it in situations that like you're not fighting over a specific objective, which is how a lot of the Eastern teams play. Where it's
so
like,
even if you get a win, what do you get after that?
You're not snowballing as fast because it's like, all right, well, we got a 3-4-0 around mid with no real neutral objectives we can take afterwards. I feel like you see that a lot with them, which does a great job of keeping the teams unprepared because you're like, why are you fighting me here? But they also don't always snowball with that as much, I think.
I feel like Vitality are just a team that go hard in the paint. That's, it's this idea of like the individual performers. You know, if you think about, if you try to separate the game, and this is a very simplified way to look at it in terms of like higher level macro play and making plays on this macro level as like a unified team, which is kind of where I put like G2 right now, versus then someone like Vitality who's about the individual performers, the individual decision making. Juzuke saying, I think I've got it in, I'm gonna go for the dive, and as he's doing it, his team's like, what? Like, and no one else seems to be reacting to it. And sometimes you do get those beautiful moments where everyone on Vitality is moving in the same direction, but a lot of it is, you know, these individual pieces that just keep going, and it's very hard to play against a team like that when everything's on fire on the map.
And I'm just wildly pumped that we get to start the final days of each of these groups with this one. That, you know, where you've got kind of the front runner and then the 3 teams tied behind that, because it is going to be a very exciting, tense, and pressureful day to see who makes it out. That is going to do it for us here, though, for day 4 of the group stages. Now for myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for more Worlds 2018.
The only thing that's holding us back is our ability to execute. Once we fix that, we'll be good.
I'm going bar side. Top no flash, top no flash. Hey, Bars. I'm looking Bars. Bars dead. Hey, Shine, no flash. Back up to mid.
Triple knockup into impact triple taunt. Mad Team overstepped their bounds here, and Team Liquid with the huge punish.
I'll be demanding when I say, pick me Orn.
The Spirit's Refuge comes down. That's a 2-man knockup. Empties the first target. He flashes the wall. Caps comes chasing, trying to run him down. Sonic Wave. If it finds the target.
You don't need to flash by the way. What the fuck?
No, I'm gonna target.
Stop. Yeah, I can stop. W. It's only Sang. We can. Woohoo! Holy shit, Wunder! Oh, please, Wunder.
Nice! Keen in some trouble absorbing all the damage here. First disarm goes through. Melodius has able to find himself the kill onto Keen now as he tries to get himself away, but the follow-up is there. Afrika Freaks now sit in a spot where they're 7,000 gold up. Their top laner's now looking for blood 1v1, and he's found it. This is the Keen people wanted to see. Afrika find their first win.
I'm nothing. I'm level 2. Okay. Level 2. Go Sire.
Yeah, go Sire.
Passive. Run up. Nice.
And it will likely have dire consequences yet again. Balon's going fishing and Econ 2 big ones.
The LPL remains undefeated in the tournament, and so I kind of want to continue the conversation around how we beat this region.
We've got junglers joining. There is a flash available for Ivory, but he needs to use it quickly. The dash forward, first blood to KT Rolster.
끝까지 온다.
Going gold in the middle of the fight. Disdain catches onto Ray. He runs for his life, but look at the fear beyond death. Mata goes in and is shot right back out. Oh! Nexus turret goes down, but look at the engage. UCal finds Edward Gaming. KT Rolster will turn their attention to the Nexus, go undefeated, and hand the LPL their first loss.